So welcome to this episode of Pastor and Polarna. Today we have an episode in English and we have an interview. But before we go into the discussion, let's have some context. We are going to have a discussion about theology today. Theology is a big and fancy word, and it is very much related to the Bible and also to the church. But theology is also an academic discipline that you can study at a university. It is also something every church member comes in contact with through sermons, Sabbath school, even your personal Bible reading at home. You encounter somehow theology. So that's what we're going to talk a bit about today, and we're going to try to make sense of it and make it easy and accessible. And for that we have a special guest, Mervi Cederström. And for those who don't know who you are, maybe you can introduce yourself with a few words.
Hey, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Anton. I am Mervi, and we need to do this in English, not yet in Swedish, because I have not been living in Sweden for very long, only 6 months now. But I come from Estonia, and as my educational background, I am both a linguist and a theologian. So I have a master's degree in both of these fields, and right now I am very close to finishing up my doctoral dissertation in Andrews University. So theology is something that is very close to my heart, because I see this from all sorts of angles. I have studied it as an academic discipline. I am a preacher, so I want to do good theology in my sermon preparation or when I teach people, when I preach. But in the end of the day, I am also just a follower of Jesus, who is trying very faithfully to read the Bible, to understand it, to make sense of it, also the difficult parts. So I get the theology from all angles.
I recognize that as well. So we have just a few questions today. We're not gonna go into all the academic details and all of this kind of stuff, but we have to start off by asking what is theology? What do we mean, and what are we talking about? As what is it? If we can define it a little bit.
Well, it is not so very easy, but maybe one thing that we can do is to go back to the word and see what it means itself. So theology comes from two Greek words. Theos means God in Greek, and logos, this very famous concept, maybe a little bit difficult to put into one word, but it can mean a word, a discourse, reasoning, conversation, something like that. So basically, in the easiest sense of the word, theology is all what we say and what we reason and what we believe about God. And yes, mostly theology for church members is done on a non-academic level, but also as an academic discipline. We talk about God, we talk about history, we talk about the world of the Bible, we talk about manuscripts, we talk about original languages, all of this that somehow connects to God and connects to belief in God.
Are there different types of theology, or is it just one umbrella for different things?
In this sense, what comes to my mind first is how they do that in Newbold College, where we both have studied. So basically, when you do a master's degree in theology in Newbold, then you can choose one from 3 pathways. You either go to a pastoral theology pathway, which is more connected to the actual church life, being among people, teaching, leading, which is a very important part of church community and church life. Then we can talk about systematic theology, which mostly concentrates on the history of theology and the history of some thoughts, history of concepts, how theology has changed over the time. And then the third pathway is the biblical languages, which is for those nerds, including me, I went down this pathway, who want to know more and dig deeper into the world of Greek in the New Testament, or Hebrew in the Old Testament, to understand the original languages better, and through this to understand the whole of the Bible better. So maybe this distinction between these three is a little bit helpful for someone who thinks about what does the theology mean and what does it mean as an academic discipline.
Why is it important? Why is theology important? I mean, yes, we can study it in university and get an academic degree, but for someone in church who is just a regular visitor or has another completely different background, why is it important, and how can it benefit someone?
It is very important in a sense that for a regular church member, for a follower of Jesus, in a way, theology boils down to what kind of picture we have of God. What do we believe about God? What do we believe he is? What has he done? How does he see us as human beings? And there are some authors who point out the very obvious thing that we turn into the kind of person that we believe God to be. So in that sense, what we believe about God is very important. If we believe him to be very strict and a little bit angry and punishing, then as a result, well, this is the kind of person we will turn into as believers. And if we believe God to be somehow different, merciful, loving, just, then these are the things that will come out in our own life as we walk with God. So what we believe is actually very important also as to who we are as people and who we are as people who function in this world among other people who share our faith. So what we believe about God and what we read from the Bible about God is, in the end of the day, very, very important.
Before recording and in preparation, you mentioned something about theology in a group or in a community. Can you say something about that?
Yes, I can say something about that. And in the background, we have to remember that we here in the Western Europe, we live in the most individualistic time and place of the whole of the world history. And this individualism seeps into our life and our belief systems as well. So what I see as a big problem when we talk about God, when we make our own theology, how we make sense of the Bible and how we think what it says and how we should shape our lives. One big danger is that people think they can do theology by themselves, or that someone goes home, draws the curtains, opens the YouTube and just watches all sorts of videos that are out there. And when we talk about theology and internet has been a big blessing for the mankind, but it also poses a very, very serious danger. And that is, danger is that there is everything out there. So through the channel of internet, you can access very good, sound biblical teaching, but you can also find a very short cut to all sorts of conspiracy theories and weird ideas and bad theology and stuff that makes you not more loving and not kinder, but that makes you more anxious and more angry. So one thing about the theology from a historical perspective is that it has always been done in a community, in a church community. And I think we can see it also in our church, how this idea that you can just choose whatever you want to choose, you can watch whoever lecturer you think is good, how it's actually bringing fraction and bringing fights into our church. So I firmly believe that one way of guarding a good biblical teaching is doing theology together with other faithful church community members. So as a practical suggestion, when you are making a battle with some Bible text or some theological concept and you don't know the answer, or you feel like you would like to know more, then forget about internet, forget about all that stuff is out there. Go to church, go to people you can trust, go to people who have walked the way of discipleship for a very, very long time. Maybe an old pastor or an old church elder, someone you can actually trust, someone bears the fruit of the Spirit. And talk to them about this. And take this question to your Bible study group on a Sabbath morning. Talk to trusted friends. Talk to the church community. And be open-minded and let them help you form your theology. Don't isolate yourself ever from the church community. This is a sure way into bad theology and bad faith, if we can put it this way. So I think it's actually very, very important that as a part of the people of God, and we are always called as a Christians to be a part of the people of God, we are not being called individually as much as we have been called collectively. It is important that our theology is shaped and being done inside the church community.
I agree, and I see that. We are coming into this right now, but how and maybe what can a person do to access theology in a simple way? I would like to, maybe if we can share some tips and tricks to get into, theology in a good way and in an easy way, so we can, both of us have studied at university, but for those who don't have that opportunity, how can theology be accessible? What can we do? Shortcuts. I don't know if there's shortcuts, but tips, tricks, hacks.
I would like to begin with how we read the Bible, because this is the basis of our theology. So one very simple, very practical tip is read as big chunks as possible.
Especially the Old Testament, right? And Paul's letters.
Yes, but also it actually applies to the gospel stories. Because only by reading not just one verse or even one chapter at a time, trying to read through, for example, a whole book in one go or in as short as time as possible, we will start seeing the connections within the biblical story. And when I teach Bible studies, I am doing a series of Bible studies in the book of Mark, and almost every second time I have to remember my listeners that these little titles that we have in the Gospels about this story and that story and the third and fourth story, these were not there in the original text. all sorts of verse numbers, chapters, these little titles that help us, but also break the story and break the flow of the text into smaller chunks. It can actually hinder us, because there might be some connections between the stories that we do not notice just because we only read one tiny little verse or one tiny little chunk. And for us as Adventists, or probably most of our listeners are Adventists, very good exercise. Read through the book of Revelation in one go. And don't bother about this trumpet or that plague or this number or what does this symbol mean. Just read it in one go. And it takes about an hour and a half. It's not so much. And it's amazing how this story comes alive in a different way, and how it resolves in the end of the book. You almost feel physical relief when you get to the end of the book, to the last 2 chapters. So one very simple way of reading the Bible or understanding it better is trying to read bigger chunks than just 1 or 2 verses or 1 or 2 chapters.
I mean, as you say, we not only reading small bits and pieces, but connecting these small different pieces from one place to the other, and create something new for that. I think that's also a bit of a, I mean, we can do that, we do that, but we also have to think that it's the Bible was not meant to be read that way.
Yes. I think a lot of work has been done for us when we pay attention to the parallel texts. So we can jump throughout the Bible and find the connections that are there. But of course, we can also find much more than the little things sometimes in the footnotes telling us what text this refers to. So yes, that is something that we can do. Second thing I would say is read the Bible in as many versions and translations that you can. And we don't have to be afraid of different translations. I know that the topic of which version is better or more original than the other, I know that it's a little bit controversial, this topic. But if we put this controversy to the side, then this is a good advice to read in many translations, in as many languages as you can. Many of us can understand and read in more than just one language. And also in one language, if we find as many versions as possible, there can be little details, little nuances of translation, little nuances of words that can help us understand this text better if we don't just stick to one version. And for those of us who have read the Bible many times, sometimes the version that we are used to reading it makes us a little bit blind to little details just because the text has become so familiar to us. So then it's really good to shake yourself a little bit and go to another language or go to another version and read the text in another version and see if the text starts speaking to you in a new way, and if you find some new things that you hadn't noticed before in the text.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I have a few experiences with that, and you have these today, the paraphrase versions, like the Message, for example, or in Swedish there's other things like that. But those can be good for just plain reading. If I mean, like, as you say, if you just want to read chunks, those could be good. And then you start to think, okay, you start to think differently, I would say, if you do that. But the big question then, or the big question, but the question is the original languages of the Bible. Like, is there some way we or lay people or those who haven't studied can start to come into this world of the biblical original languages, Hebrew, Greek, or how can we start into that?
It is possible, and in these days, I would say it's easier than ever before, just because nowadays to have a Greek dictionary, you don't have to go to a theological library and take home like a door stopper or a book that weighs as much as a brick. But so many things have been digitalized, and so many things are online. So with a little bit of looking around, it is possible to find versions or pages or places. You don't even have to pay for them. You know, a lot of theologians use very good tools, digital tools, that gives them all sorts of information from the original languages. But even as a regular Bible reader, you can find places where you can a little bit smell the original languages. And what I use personally sometimes online when I do my preparation for my sermons, it's called blueletterbible.com. Sorry, it's blueletterbible.org, not com.
Exactly. That's also something I go to every now and then.
So blueletterbible.org is one of those pages, and I have to say it's not a very user-friendly page. So you will have to look around quite a bit to find what you're looking for. But there you have the text in the Greek, the text in Hebrew. You also have an access to Vulgata, meaning the main translation to Latin, and when you want to see a verse, for example, in Greek, then you can also click on each word separately, see what the word means in Greek. So these kind of things are possible. But from a more academic viewpoint, I also want to stress, and I also want to say that we really need people to study the original languages. It is not some sort of a theological fancy, but it's actually very substantial work that people who spend and who dedicate their lives to the study of the biblical languages, what they are doing. It is an important work, and it is a work that helps us understand the Bible better and better. And it's not a matter of checking if the Bible translations are right. Some people have said, well, but you know, there's so many people who have studied Greek, so you know, there's nothing new coming out, or you know, the New Testament has already been translated from the Greek, which is of course true, and we don't have to doubt this work. We don't have to doubt this effort that has been put into translation over hundreds and thousands of years. But there are little nuances that are so interesting to know. And that's why we always need people who would dedicate themselves to this work. I have taught New Testament Greek as a course in a university, and sometimes I try to inspire my students, and I have these few examples that I like to give. For example, my favorite example from Greek probably comes from the book of Acts, chapter 4, where the apostles, Peter and John, are in front of the high council, and they have to give answer to what they are doing, and they're trying to shut them down and tell them not to speak in the name of Jesus anymore. And there's this little place where it says that the high council, that they recognize that these were simple and unlearned men. And this word that has been translated into English as unlearned, actually in Greek comes from the word idiotes. That's the word, idiotes. Of course, we also have to know that that the word idiot didn't have exactly the same meaning in the ancient Greek. It actually meant an unlearned or unskilled or illiterate man. but it's just so much fun when you know this. I think it's just wonderful to know what kind of word has been used there, because it gives so much to the text, and I think it's just pure fun.
Yeah, and I mean some of us are inclined into language in general, and I mean why not try to study this in university? I mean, there's several places in Sweden, for example, where you can do a course, or you can take this Hebrew, you can take the Greek and whatever. I'm sure there is online courses as well, and you can also, contact someone who have been studying at Newbold or has some connection there, who can have access to, use your contacts really. I know that one, he studied there. I know that one, he might be able to help me to do this. Yeah. Okay, that's that about the original languages. So it is possible. It will require some effort, but once you get there, it's really nice. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything else you can say, like a hack or something to come into theology a bit better? We only have like 5-10 minutes.
We have talked about reading the Bible, trying to read it in bigger chunks. We talked about reading in different languages, in different versions, trying to maybe smell a little about Hebrew and Greek with the help of the tools that are available online. And on top of also that theology is being done in a good community, good theology is being done in a good community. I would just add one more thing to this simple process of doing theology as a faithful follower of Jesus, and that is find a good commentary. Again, a lot of stuff is out there, but right now, unfortunately, I have not been able to work with it yet. I have not been able to look at it closer, but just now, like in a very recent days, there has been published a completely new Bible
Commentary?
Bible commentary, thank you, in the Andrews University, an Adventist Bible commentary, brand new. And just by looking at the list of contributors, the list of authors, I was very, very impressed. So of course, your critical thinking needs to always be switched on. That's one thing. When you read different commentaries, when you read different books, when you read different ideas, people come from different traditions, from different places. But if you have a solid source that you trust and whose author or authors you can trust, then this helps you a lot doing good theology. So get the latest Adventist Bible commentary, and I think this will be a very, very good tool in your personal theology.
And not only that, but buy theological books in general, like it doesn't have to be commentaries. It could be other stuff. And I would also say that if you want to have a real cool intellectual experience, go to books or stuff that you don't agree with from the beginning, and read those, listen to those things, and like intentionally expose yourself to ideas that are different than your own.
Yeah, that's maybe a little bit like an advanced level, because first you have to be sure, like you have to be very confident in what you believe, but also I agree with you in a sense that that exposing yourself to all sorts of ideas, your own intellectual work gets much more intense, And sometimes I feel it when I am listening or reading to someone, and I'm like very intensely working in my own head. I'm like, okay, I don't agree with this because of that. I don't think this is a biblical approach because this. But in this process, I am also like stretching myself, and I am also training my theological muscles. And I hope that I am, becoming closer and closer to the biblical teaching in whatever topic it is. But I do agree that different books can be very good way for us to do good theology.
Yeah, like one lecturer at Newbold, he was stressing a lot of the time that, start to build your own library, get your resources, and physical, yes, but also digital. You can save a lot of digital online, but books and hard copies could also be really cool. I think that's probably it for today. Our time is running out. Thank you for sharing, and I hope some of you listeners are inspired to dig some deeper into theology wherever you are and however you think it's best for you. So thank you for listening, and see you another time. Bye bye.